It.
Hey guys, welcome to an interview here. So I am here with Chris of Mad Cave Comics. So would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do for Mad Cave?
Sure, yeah. I'm Chris Sanchez. I'm the editor in chief over at Mad Cave Studios. And for those of you who don't know, Mad Cave Studios is an independent publisher. And we're really at this point in time of like a transition of uh, just getting really good, fun comics out there and making sure they're of quality. Again, we're at a place where I think comics are so good now. I'm loving the place that comics are in right now, and I want to be a part of making really more fun and cool comics with a lot of cool people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I feel like every year it's just like something, new
Mhm.
and cool happens in comics. And what I love is just how diverse, really how comics have become, where, I feel that's not just the superhero stuff anymore. If you don't like superheroes, it doesn't mean you won't like comic books, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, and up until this point, we have I think 7 or 8 titles published right now. We don't have a superhero book as of yet, but again, that's uh, that's sort of like the indie comic thing of like we don't do superheroes until we have to, or
Oh yeah, for
until
sure.
or until you have like a really cool like Invincible or something, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to do superheroes, but let's actually age people up, and you're like, oh cool.
Yeah, like how do you make this different from the Marvels and DCs? Now, before we like jump in, deep into the questions,
Mhm.
I do want to say for our listeners, and thank you so much, Chris, for giving us a trade here, Show's End
Right.
Volume One, to give away. So all you have to do is comment, literally, and then in the end, I'll go on random.org, and whoever is the first person on the list, we will get your address. I am gonna put my email in the chat in the comments, so if you have to leave or something, I'll give you guys a day to watch this video and see if you won or not. So, but we are going to announce it at the end. You can email me so I know who's the winner and with your address. But yeah, let's jump in to how did you start Mad Cave? What was the origin story there?
Right. So I wasn't at the inception of Matt Cave. Matt Cave started it was about 4 or 5 years ago with Mark London, who's the CEO and founder. He's sort of like his big passion project. He grew up reading comics. He just loved the comic form, and so finally he was just like, actually, it's really a story of like him always talking about it, and then his wife is just like, hey, could just go do it, go do it if you want to do it. Um, and yeah, he's just sort of started this company. And for the beginning, before we were just going to cons and just pulling out Battle Cats and Midnight and Nights is sort of like were our first couple series that we were doing. And at that point, it was just like we're going to cons, we're like going to Comixology Submit, not really putting in like actual time and dedication to it until we got accepted into Diamond. And it was with that we're like, oh, wait, we need to actually have a plan and stuff needs to come out on time because retailers expect stuff to come out on time. That's a huge thing in comics of just like the retailer needs to trust you if you're going to succeed at all. Uh, so that's about 2 years ago. Yeah, I think we're going on our third year now with Diamond. I was actually hired on right at the start of us coming into Diamond, and sort of I was hired on as an office assistant sort of thing, and then it was just like, oh hey, you can write a little bit. Here, go copyright, and then it was like, oh here, handle all of social media, and I was like, oh cool, and it just sort of like bounced around there till I was like editing, and then somehow fell into this, which is very weird still, but it works out. Um, but yeah, so that was just recently where we're now started getting into more. We're starting to put more like time and effort and more dedication and passion into a lot of our books, and especially now we're hiring on more editors and really just pushing forward that Matt Cave is here and it's for real.
And what was the process of putting your comics in Diamond? I think a lot of people who aren't working in the industry is just like, yeah, you just do it, you know? And obviously there's a lot more than that. So
Yeah, well, with Diamond, it's actually a submission process. So you sort of like you kind of sort of have to pitch your company to Diamond, as sort of like, oh, these are the titles we're going to produce. Here's the business plan that we have set out. Here's the schedule that we have looking out. And you have to have a certain amount of quality and a certain amount of like reputation within the industry for Diamond to even take a chance on you, because again, they're if you want to get a comic distributed in the US, it's pretty much the only way to play is Diamond, especially on the direct market at least. And so and yeah, so it's just sort of like pitching your company to them and getting a plan set together and making sure you have all your ducks in a row. Um, we actually, funny, so we actually submitted the first time and we actually failed the first time. We were like,
wow.
yeah, we sort of like, it was like basically just like, you're too new, you're too green, this is not up to the quality. And Mark took that to heart and basically um, reshuffled everything, made sure we had better books, made sure we had a better plan put in place, make sure we had better people um, put in place. And the second time around, they're like, "Oh, hey, you guys are better, and you actually learned and did stuff." And it was like, "Oh, cool." And that's sort of the story of Matt Cave is, um, you know, we keep getting better, I think is what it is, which I
That's
think
awesome.
all companies should do.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I think any creator in any creative space, you should know
Right.
that you're never going to be the best. You always can learn every single day, and that's part of the process. We actually have a really nice comment here from Orlando Perez. I discovered Mad Cave a few months ago when Battle Cats popped up as a recommendation on Comixology. Great stuff. And I guess that could bring us into how do you control the digital space? And we touched a little bit about retailers because of Diamond, but how do you try to put your books out there as a newer company?
Right. Well, Comixology actually does a very good job of giving you space with Comixology Submit and tools like that for you can put your comics out there. They still have to be of a certain quality and of a certain thing, and that stuff is more about accessibility more than anything. Just because the digital space is a little weird because no one really knows the numbers, no one really knows how anything's really doing. Um, and only like the publishers themselves know. So it's a little weird. But even then, it's just all about like uh, the people's spaces at a premium in everywhere. So it's just accessibility of just like, oh hey, you have a comic at your screen, or oh hey, maybe I'll check out it digitally for the first couple issues, and then it's like, oh hey, I might get the trade when it's out, stuff
For
like that.
sure. And as an indie company, how important is trades to you? How important is
Oh,
collections? Do you see those selling better than floppies at this point?
uh, I think they're two different markets. At a certain point, I think the direct market is its own sort of beast of just like you have a sort of just the regular comic people who just go, it's like, hey, I'm going to get my floppies like every other Wednesday or something. And there's the people who go every Wednesday, or those people who just like, oh, I'll pick up a title when I see it on the shelf or something. It's a very different market to like a trade that it's sort of always on the shelf, or it's like always in our inventory, as very much of like back issues of a series are there's sort of issues are they come there Wednesday, and then maybe you'll see a back issue sale sometime in the future if someone really wants to get that single issue. Um, but often it's the trades are the evergreen book market thing. And single issues are for those either those collectors or those that just want to get that story um, as fast as possible. I think they're two different markets, and even those are those that love a series so much that they do get all the single issues and then they get the trade. And we try to make it worth it. Where our trades have like back matter and certain things, and they're super nice. I think we have a great design team, so I really love the work they're putting into the trades.
Oh yeah, just holding it, so beautiful, and quality is
Mhm.
there. It's same for your single issues as well, and thank you for sending some great single issues here. And I do want to mention current titles going on. I actually just got to read Stargazer, which I have right in front of me. So really fun book. But yeah, what's coming up for you guys? What are books that you want to promote?
Right. So Stargazer is probably our biggest one. It's in previews right now, so please, if you're interested in a very weird space sort of alien abduction story, please go pre-order it. It's very good and very fun. Fun. Uh, there's a lot of trauma. Uh, no, and pre-orders also another hugely important thing in the industry that we might talk about later. But yeah, no, Stargazers are probably our biggest thing out in previews right now. I can say we have an announcement later in the month. That's going to be really fun. But we actually just announced about 2 weeks ago, Dryfoot, which is it's a series by our last year's talent search winner Jared Luan and Orlando Cicero. And it's a Miami in the 1980s heist crime story. It's really, really cool. I love it. The logo's awesome. Yeah, those are stuff that we have, at least new stuff coming out. That's really cool. RV9 is wrapping up, and that's about to be collected in a trade, which is one of our high sellers. It's a very cool action, assassin, spy story. It's very cool.
I love that you have such a diversity of titles as
Mm-hmm.
well, and I think that's so cool. I just wanted to mention that. That wasn't just to go into a question, but we do have a question from Daniel here, who says that begs the question: which overall sells better, floppies or trades? And I guess as an indie company,
If we're talking just units, say like just units, floppies, but trades have a higher price point. So it's sort of that's why kind of there's in two different markets. Again, if you sell thousands of copies of an issue, but you sell like I don't know 300 trades, they might get you the same amount of money.
for sure.
Yeah.
And again, I think people that are just readers, don't see that as often or don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that. And another thing I think, as um people in the industry are always trying to push, like, get this book pre-ordered, because like put on your poll, because it is so important. You're just touching upon that before, because comics is this weird place where that's where the sales count. Like, you don't even know what the book's about, but it's the retailer obviously has to buy a certain
Mm-hmm.
amount of books and then give it to their readers. So can you tell us a little bit about the importance, especially as an indie company, to put stuff on your pull list?
Oh yeah, and there's a whole thing in the office where you kind of have to sell the book twice. You have to sell the book more importantly in the pre-order stage, but also as well when it's out um, in stores, because you also want to. The retailer wants to see people go out and actually discover these books. So you sort of have to sell them secondary once they're already in the stores. But to even get them in the stores, there's people have to put them on their pool, and it's really especially with indie companies, they're not gonna they're not gonna take a chance on something that isn't a known commodity. If like 2-3 people in their store have it on their pool, then they might be, oh, I'll maybe take, instead of 3 copies they're ordering, maybe I'll order like 8 and have 5 on the shelf, or stuff like that. Generally they order whatever is pre-ordered, and then they'll be like, oh, I'll have 1 on the shelf, something. But it really depends on just if the retailer itself is interested in the book. And we actually have a really good retailer relations team with Manny Castellanos handling that, and him and Taylor are both always on calls, calling retailers, making sure that everyone knows what's in previews and what's going on. Social media does a very good job of like making sure people know about the book, and advertising and marketing. It's all interwoven and just making sure that everyone knows that we actually have very cool stuff coming up.
Yeah, and that's so important as well. And we actually have a question from Greg here. Pull it up. I'm well into Mad Cave, loving the titles and the diverse lineup. Will you be at San Diego Comic-Con this year, or really conventions in general? And that could actually skew into how important are conventions for Mad Cave.
Yeah. So just to quickly, we will be at San Diego Comic-Con if it happens. Because
yeah, I mean, let's pray. Like, yeah,
stuff,
all these conventions.
stuff is because we were scheduled to be at Emerald City Comic-Con, and that's like actually my favorite show. So I'm really bummed out that got postponed. So again, we are scheduled to go. It would be our first time going to San Diego, so that would be very cool. Very cool. That was actually a very weird surprise email that we got. It was just like, oh hey, we're in San Diego. It's like, what? Okay. No, and cons, especially, I view cons as a way to make it for face-to-face fan impression. I think you're gonna, at least in my experience, you're gonna remember a face more than you'll remember a social media post or a news article or a review someone had. It's a actual person talking to you about the story, showing their passion, showing how much love and care went into this book, and actually physically holding a book in your hand is that makes a difference. And I think cons and showing that we're actual people making comic books, because that's sort of the thing is like these books appear on the shelf, but you have no idea what the person behind it looks like. I think showing that, being there, cons are especially important, not just on like the fan and selling and that stuff wise, but also like meeting cool people. Like I have met plenty of writers and artists who I work with now that I've met through cons and artist alleys.
And guys, if you've never been to a Comic-Con, Artist Alley is your best friend, and it's a great place to be. It's so good. I
love Artist Alley so much. It's my favorite.
Oh, I love it too. You can spend just hours doing that. I think so many people focus on the entertainment stuff. It's like, no, there's so many like great undiscovered people in Artist Alley. So please support. So next up, you did two talent searches actually. What made Mad Cave want to do this, and how did you help the winners become better writers or become better creators?
Sure. So Mark had the idea as sort of a thing to give back to the community that sort of supported us through our first year, in Diamond, and it's sort of a way to inject like new blood into the industry, and inject new blood into Mad Cave, because again, new voices always lead to cool new things. So our first talent search, we hired, I believe that was 10 winners overall. So 5 writers, 5 artists. And each one of them got a sort of just a book to produce. We gave them a pitch, and they sort of ran with them. And that's Shozen is one of those. Savage Bastards one of those. Over the Ropes is one of those. We have stuff later down the line from that first one. And the second one, I believe the first one of those is Dryfoot to come out. And again, it's the same thing we happened last year of just like they submitted. So the way it worked, it was like they submitted basically kind of like a spec script kind of thing of one of our series. And the artist would have to like make 2 or 3 test pages on one of our series, and we as editors or editorial reviewed them, and we picked the ones that we liked and enjoyed, and not even necessarily the best ones, but the ones that we saw had the most like passion and actual like love for the form. And then it was just sort of like, oh hey, what would you we have a couple pitches, what would you like to write, or what would you like to draw, and went from there. It was very cool. It's very cool to see a lot of people who were either like they're talented writers, but maybe didn't exactly know and knew the form and knew everything, but maybe just needed a bit some editorial help to actually get their ideas down on paper, And I think those books are very cool for that reason alone, of just how much they've grown. And like Anthony, who writes Shozen, just his jump from Shozen to Stargazer is incredibly huge, and I love it for it. I think Anthony is just incredible at just so much better than he was at Shozen. So I love that Mad Cave actually facilitated that growth.
For sure. And we actually have a couple questions here, but first I'm going to ask one of mine, and that is, do you feel like you do more work for hire, or do you accept more pitches? So is it like, here's a comic, here's like an image style, like, all right, it's finished, would you publish it, or you have like more of your own ideas?
So Mad Cave, as it's currently constructed, is a closed house, so it is work for hire. Mark has been talking about maybe opening that up, but as it stands right now, it's just we have our own generated pitches, and then we sort of let writers and artists loose in those worlds and those sandboxes. Yeah.
And I think that's so cool, because most indie houses don't do that. If it's a work for hire, it's a superhero world or whatever. But this is like, you guys come up with your own ideas, and then you give the opportunity to, I don't know, I kind of like place it in like a TV writing room, right? Where it's just like, all right, here's the idea. Let's see what these creators can do. It feels a little similar to that.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, it's sort of just like we have these cool, like weird worlds that people can just go in and just run amok, basically. And
would you like to see any connection between these stories, or you just want them all to be separate worlds?
There's been ideas pitched around, but that's not really, for me, I like stories that end. I like their own little boxes. I like that I get a single story in the trade. So I don't know, maybe in the future.
And we do have a couple of questions from the comments, like I mentioned. First, well, actually, let's do Aces first. This is more of like a general comic question. When comics go on sale, do the creators get paid the same, or does that not affect how creators are paid at all? So pretty much they're asking, like, do they get a straight up, here's, how many pages you write for your company, I guess, or do they get royalties?
For us, they get paid a page rate. So since it's work for hire, it would just be like, oh, we agreed on the set amount of what this pay is. You deliver the script or you deliver the art, and then we pay you, and they get paid.
And then, yeah, for sure. And that's usually how work for hire does work. So Daniel asks, this is considering the talent contest again. If you've been published elsewhere, can you still enter? So is this for totally green people?
For the past two ones, that has been unpublished, we haven't really talked about the one for this year. Maybe.
Have to see. Yeah. And how about if you self-published a comic? Does that count, or is it just completely never wrote a comic?
No, we're a little loose on like self-publishing. It's more like, if you worked at like IDW or the big, those, like, probably not. But it was like, oh, if you're actually self-publishing stuff, we were loose on that. I think because Jared self-published his own stuff. There's a few that self-published their own stuff that it was basically just like, oh, you guys are cool.
And also Orlando asks about a specific title. Absolutely enjoyed Over the Ropes. Are there plans for more volumes?
There's a story there. Maybe. I can't really say anything until that book has been put to rest. But there's stories there. There's talks.
And going back to more of the creative side, when you are trying to hire someone for a work for hire, what makes a pitch stand out, or what makes a portfolio stand out to you?
It's great. So another way they tell people, if you're looking to get hired and stuff, make your stuff as easily accessible as possible. Because I go through I was like, oh, this person does really cool work. Where's their portfolio? And I just can't find it. And just like, oh, well, that's rough, because I really like this one specific thing. So make your stuff as easily accessible as possible. Also, make your contact information pretty easily found. That you'd be surprised how many times I wanted to reach out to creators, just like I can find no way to reach this person. Cool. Um, so that stuff. But as far as the actual content, if you're looking for sequential work, have sequential works for me to look at. Um, don't expect me to guess your sequentials from like illustrations.
Like, here's my print, because it's so
Yeah,
different.
it's a completely different skill set. It's completely different. If you're looking for cover work, have covers available. If you're looking for sequential stuff, have that stuff available. If you have multiple different styles, that is another thing that's huge for me to look at, because one style might not work for the story that I'm hiring for, but this other style might. Being varied in that approach. Be as far as writing. So for a writer, I would say it's hard to get an editor or someone looking to hire to read a script. It's very hard to do that. So I would say get sample comics made, get shorts made, start a web comic with someone. That stuff makes your writing way more accessible to me.
And show that you know what you're doing, I'm guessing,
Yes.
too, because it shows like, oh, I've done this before. It's not like, oh, I tried out for a day to write a script.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, like, if you send me 5 sample scripts, that's rough for me to like read and know that you're like a good writer and know that this stuff flows. And it's, if you send me a 5-page short, 100% I'll read that any day of the week. It's just a way to make your stuff as accessible as possible.
Sure. Let's jump into you, honestly. How did you get started in the industry and really starting all this, and what got you into comics?
Well, growing up, at least like in like middle school or might have been elementary now, I read manga. Manga was like my first introduction to comics as a medium. And if you don't think manga or comics, you are crazy, and I don't want to speak to you. And no, just growing up, it was manga, and then sort of in high school when I got a job, it was like, oh hey, I can actually afford comics, yay. And or like I would go to libraries and different stuff. So and then it was like actually going to comic shops and actually being around the industry and reading a ton. And and that sort of like made my love for storytelling birth. I was always reading as a kid. And when I went to school for creative writing. And there, actually, my favorite stuff wasn't so much the writing part, even though I was decent at it. It was more so the workshopping and working on other people's stuff and collaborating in those fields. And I was like, oh, this stuff is actually really cool. Like, this is my favorite stuff, not just like locked in a room trying to get thoughts out of my head, which is very difficult. And so out of school, I basically just like looked for any job that required, me typing, because that's what you do when you are a creative writing major. And I bounced around some stuff, social media stuff and stuff like that, and sort of just ended up in Mad Cave. And again, I think I told you like that before, like quick sort of thing, just like I made myself available to do a bunch of stuff of just like, I will do whatever you guys need. If you need me to copyright, I would do that. If you need social media stuff, I can do that. And that eventually led to Mark noticing that and giving me a chance of being an editor. And just sort of spiraled from there.
And let's see. Also, what is the day-to-day of your job? What do you do on each day as editor in chief?
I'm going on.
Hard question.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of new to the position. So it's been about 3-4 weeks, and every day seems like just another crazy, busy day of just like either I really need to focus on the book that I am or books that I'm currently editing, whether that's reading scripts or checking layouts or checking inks or colors or any part of the process of a comic, and just making sure and giving notes and revisions and stuff like that. Recently, recently my job now requires working with editorial team, as we hired three very cool editors: Steens, Erica Schultz, and Michael Mosio. They're awesome people, and they are very cool to work with, as I don't have to explain really anything to them because they are dope. Uh, and that's sort of, and through that, we have started sort of building out their projects, hiring those people that'll work on those books. That was a big part of actually today, of just like emailing emailing writers, seeing schedules, seeing rates, how can we make books work, how can we make budgets work, and different stuff like that. um yeah, so it's a lot of like multitasking and managing, overseeing other editors projects, as well as making sure mine are still on task, which is a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. And do you guys work remotely or do you guys have an office together?
We have an office here in Miami of sort of like the core main team, like Mark, Chris Fernandez, who's our publisher, and the retailer relations people. But editorial is, they are all over the place. Um, yeah, editorial, I believe everyone works remotely except for me. Yeah,
Damn, there you go. And that makes everything even harder because you have to wrangle everyone
yeah,
together, get those
yeah.
phone calls going.
It happens. It happens. But you know, it's a good though. Editors, they really work with creators on their own, and then like bring me stuff to look at and and approve, and making sure I, you know, usually it's, oh, that's that editor's book, and I get like a weekly check-in of just like, how's it going, is there everything's going all right, making sure there's no sticking points, and helping out when I can.
And I guess we have a couple more questions. I feel like we touched upon this a little bit, but if you have anything else you want to add, but as an up and coming company, how do you make your titles in particular stand out to people? Are there any strategies that you use to get as many books in people's hands?
I think it's not so much the content, even though that is very important, um, because the content itself needs to be unique and of quality and all the things that a good comic needs to be. But there are so many of those good comics that are just as good as yours, or even better than yours, that are on the star on. They come out the same Wednesday as your comic. So I think the separation point in what can you do to stand out is making sure you are professional, making sure you're always on time, making sure no one has a bad thing to say about you, and making sure that all our retailer calls are ending with that person at the end of the call, make sure, oh, hey, that was actually a pleasant conversation with like an actual human being. I think that's what separates like really good companies and great companies, because you can put out a very good book, and if you're not a great person to work with, if you don't know how to talk about your book, or if you just can't really get over that hump of just making sure you're a pleasant person, then no one's going to read your book.
For sure. And is there anything else you'd like to plug? Again, we discussed a bit about other books that were coming out, but yeah, anything in particular that you really want to shout out?
At this moment, no. I mean, again, no. Shows and trade. If you don't win the giveaway, It's available at our store. It's very good. I love Shozen. It's probably my favorite trade that we've put out. It's a carnival supernatural kind of story. It's very cool. I love it.
Speaking of giveaways, we are actually going to do our giveaway, and I just saw someone comment, so you're just added to the giveaway. So I'm going to screen share the show here so we could go to random.org. I've been listing you guys all throughout the show, and whoever is the first is the winner, and then I'm going to give you 24 hours to accept the prize, and then if I don't hear anything, the second person will win, and then you guys could contact me. So let's see who is the winner. That is Two Brothers Comics, who actually just came on. So thank you so much. Let me unshare. Well, also the second person would be Orlando Perez. So I'm going to give my email in the chat. All you have to do is email me, and then I'll get your address, and I will send out that package. So there you go. So congratulations to the winner. Hopefully you're still here. I think you probably are if you just entered. And then we also had another commenter. Show's end was dope. Agree. And yeah, so anything you'd like to plug for yourself, any social media stuff before we end? So where can everyone follow Mad Cave?
Yeah, sure. Well, Mad Cave is at Mad Cave Studios. Very simple. It's on all social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow it. Social media team does a very good job of doing a lot of cool stuff. Our Instagram is actually very cool now, so go check it out. It's really dope. The designers are literally just having a great ball with Instagram, and I love it. And as for me, if you want to follow me, I'm at Why the Last Chris, because I'm a Brian K. Vaughan nerd. So
me too. Absolutely a Brian K. Vaughan nerd. Very excited for that Paper Girls show whenever we get it. Love that book. Yes. And also Why the Last Man, if we ever get that show as well.
That show is so cursed.
It seriously is. They're on their like third lead or something. So I don't know what's happening with it, but I'm very excited for whatever Brian K. Vaughan has. Now that's actually our next show. It won't be an interview. We're just gonna ban over Brian K. Vaughan.
I will do that in a heartbeat.
Oh, for sure. Maybe we will. That'd be a lot of fun.
Do that in a heartbeat.
Yes, we're gonna plan it, guys. I hope you guys want it. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take Chris up on it. And actually, Two Brothers Comics here in the comments said that he has several copies of the show's end, which is amazing.
I was gonna say, because Two Brothers is they're actually a podcast that I think Mark and Anthony have both done.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think they might have it.
I have a feeling. So they did offer for number 2 to get it, which was again Orlando Perez. So Orlando Perez, hopefully you're still here. If not, I'll try to do random.org again and figure out who I'm going to give it to, but I'm sure someone will want it.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So thank you again for Chris. Thanks for coming on, Chris. And I had a great time discussing comics as always, and hopefully I get you on again at some point. For sure.
I had a great time too. This is awesome. Getting to talk about comics the best.
Oh yeah, for sure. And thank you guys, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yep. Bye.